Democracy. For the last several months, I've been working on democracy extensively. The first point I noticed in researching democracy is that we have been alluding to the word democracy with an idea in mind as though it means something that it actually isn't, that it actually isn't set up to within the system to actually do. But when people mention democracy, all these symbols come up: patriotism, freedom, freedom of choice, etc. And they go from there without really actually looking at how it's designed, how the system is actually designed to function, which isn't democracy at all. But even if you look in the dictionaries, do a Google search for the word democracy, you'll see that it's a contradiction of terms. For example, democracy, as Google defines it, as dictionaries define it, can be such that a few people are in control of the government, which is actually the definition for oligarchy. So one of the first things I've been doing in researching democracy is looking for a new definition for democracy, something that we can all agree upon, and something that we can take and use as a collective process of collective determination. And what I've come up with so far in the spirit of democracy, as it's, I would say, supposed to be, is that democracy is the collective expression of equality. And I'll expand on that in a little later. Another point that I've come up with in looking at the collective expression of equality, okay, where is the collective expression of equality in this world, within humanity? And it's fascinating what I found. The collective expression of equality, first of all, is here. Democracy on Earth is here. It's in nature, for example, in the ecosystem, as the collective expression of equality, where all is determined by the aggregate of all life forms. So in life, in the ecosystem, there is democracy. It's not called democracy, it's called ecology or ecosystem. However, when I dug deeper looking for democracy within and as humanity, what I found was that nowhere on earth are we as a community, perhaps in the Amazon jungles, but perhaps, nowhere on earth are we as a group of two or more, all the way to all of mankind, all the way to all of humanity, living and expressing in democracy. Because there is no equality within and as humanity. Democracy as the collective expression of equality requires equality. Simple as that. Fascinatingly enough, there is democracy within and as the system of humanity. And looking at the external world system first, the place where we have democracy is, of all places, within and as the democracy of money, the collective expression of monies within groups of currencies. $1 is equal to $1. $1 expresses exactly equal to another dollar. And it's fascinating because if you say, where did this come from? Well, then you start looking at the consciousness of humanity, the consciousness, the mind consciousness system of each of us, and we'll see that within consciousness of humanity, there is democracy. And there it is. Yeah, there is democracy. Because the world system is basically a product of what we accept and allow within our own minds, from the small to the big of the world system. And we see that money as the representative of energy, of self-interest, of mind, of consciousness. There actually is democracy. And where we as humanity are not yet standing within and as democracy is simply because there is no equal and one standing within and as humanity. We're not doing it as consciousness beings standing equal and one within and as our physical bodies. We're standing as self-interest of, happiness, giving more and more and more of consciousness. And the democracy of consciousness is spread that throughout the world. We'll see that manifest as the money system of energy, of self-interest. And so within the world system, there is democracy, but it's only in the system of money. And what's become, since the introduction of money, is the democracy of money has become the dominant world system within which all other systems flow. Thus, the hierarchy of money, which is a democratic system, because it's all currencies within groups of currencies, are equal. $1 equals $1, 1 pound equals 1 pound. Yet, as the distribution of monies within the world system is not equal, we've come to have the hierarchy of money as a world system, a tool of power and control used by those who have more money. So within the world system as it currently operates now, there are no groups of humanity functioning in democracies. It's all democracy of the money, by the money, for the money. To bring about democracy is really to bring about awareness, starting with self, because it is from each human being of the small within our minds that we collectively, as consciousness here, are creating the world system of inequality, the world system of money. So what it is for us is to equalize ourselves first, equalize our mind consciousness systems to stand equal to, within and as, our physical human bodies, stand as responsible humans, and this will translate eventually into a world system where there is democracy. To directly work with the world system at large to bring about democracy, so we work in the small and the big at the same time, we're able to basically change the way money is distributed in this world. If we want democracy, the only way we're ever going to have democracy in the world system, first of all, we've got to stand as it. We've got to change ourselves. But looking at the bigger picture of the world system, to get to democracy requires equality. And as long as the distribution of monies are not equal, there will be no equality. Because as we all know, within this world, it is money that determines one's ability to participate in the system, to survive in the system. And so when looking at, for example, direct democracy, real democracy, directive democracy, what we require is equality. And yeah, it basically requires a redistribution of wealth to get started on that. But not in one step, because that would just cause chaos. So I support more the stepping stone process, whereas we, as we're doing on a worldwide basis, are becoming aware of what is here, aware of the inequalities, aware that we ourselves, to change the world, require simply to change ourselves. The world functions, everything functions, a function of life, how life functions, is in relationships. Equalize our relationships to ourselves first, and then to one another, and we equalize this world, which is a catch-22 situation, though, in a sense, because asking people to change themselves without giving them the opportunity to change themselves, because most of the people are so locked in survival mode, there's no opportunity to even look at self. It's just a question of getting up in the morning and struggling to survive. So those of us who are able to basically require not only to change ourselves, but also to change the external world system so that others have an opportunity to get out of survival mode and start changing themselves, to stand as eyes, pillars of the change that is taking place in the world. So in the external, the world system, taking a step-by-step approach to bringing about democracy, bringing about equality, and it is about bringing about democracy, because if we just input the changes from a dictatorial perspective, without the people actually being part of the process, there'll be no pillars to support those changes, even though they may be the changes that need to be put in place. Without the pillars to support those changes, they'll fall. They won't be supported. So we who are able to change ourselves, but also input changes into the world system, such as pushing through reforms such as living income guarantee, whereas people are guaranteed a living income, a basic living income, enough to survive in a dignified way, but not enough to go out and buy sports cars, not enough to go out and buy luxury goods, but enough to survive. By pushing through such reforms as that, we enable, in certain areas at a time, people to take themselves out of survival mode and start focusing on themselves, so that they can begin standing. We can begin standing as the pillars of the change that are taking place. So that change, whether it comes from the external world system, top down or bottom up, it's got to be equally aligned with standings as pillars, to standing as that change, to support the change. Otherwise it won't work. So democracy, the definition I've come up with so far, is basically the collective expression of equality. Expanding upon that, you could say within and as which all is collectively determined by the degree of self-directiveness of each participant within and as the collective. Now, that definition obviously might go a little further than humanity is ready for, but that's kind of a goal so far for democracy that we should set for ourselves. Set the definition of democracy at perfection so that we're always moving, standing as the collective expression on a journey to perfection. Perfection is not something that is actually reached, it's lived in breath by breath, as a living stand, but not as a goal to be obtained with no further, nowhere else to go. Its perfection is a way of life, constantly considering what is best for all, how one is able to support all, support self, but also support all, and living that way. And in this manner, once we as humanity start realizing that when we stop competing and start cooperating, our world will instantly begin expanding. The possibilities become unlimited. All we've been doing in terms of possibilities since humanity began was contracting, to the point where a few with all the money actually perhaps believe they're living because they have more money, when they don't realize, or many don't realize, once we start cooperating, letting go of competition, that's when the possibilities start arising. Thank you.